It was an ordinary Friday afternoon. I was sitting in my office, staring at the computer screen, but my thoughts had already drifted far away. Outside the window, the setting sun was slowly falling into the horizon, coloring the sky a gorgeous orange-red. This beautiful scene should make people happy, but I feel a burst of inexplicable irritability. Hey, Eamon, there's a party tonight. Want to go chill? My coworker James suddenly appeared beside me and asked in a brisk tone. James is the marketing manager of our company, a funny and sociable black guy. Although we are not in the same department, we often discuss some work ideas. James always has a way to ease the tension in the office, and with him, the pressure seems to be no longer stressful. Thanks, man, but I'm afraid I can't tonight. I closed my laptop and smiled apologetically at him. I promised Leora I'd be home early tonight. Lately, she's been complaining that I'm too busy and that we need to spend more time connecting. James shrugged with a knowing look. Whoa, woman. Yes, a woman. My wife Leora, to be exact. To be precise, my wife Leora, with whom we've been together for 8 years, 5 years of marriage, a relationship that should have been as sweet as a first love, but in reality is as bland and boring as plain water. Especially in recent times, I always feel that there is a layer of invisible membrane between us, which I can't tell you, but it is like sticking in my throat. I tried to talk to Leora more than once. When I sat down face to face, she would either get lost in her laptop, or she'd start rambling on about the yoga classes she'd taken and the movies she'd watched, but she'd never say anything about our relationship. After a while, I didn't bother to ask, and anyway, life went on, didn't it? As I left the office and drove home, my thoughts were still in turmoil. Marriage should not be like this. Shouldn't you be happy with the person you love? But why now? I just feel tired and powerless. The car drove slowly into the neighborhood and stopped in front of mine and Leora's house. I take a deep breath, tell myself to be patient and tolerant, take off my glasses and rub my swollen temples. It was Friday, a good opportunity to talk to my wife. No matter what she wants to talk about, I will listen carefully. Maybe what we need is just a long heart-to-heart talk. With this in mind, I pushed open the door, expecting to see my wife's smiling face. But what came to my face was a dark silence. Leora, I'm back. I called out, my voice echoing in the empty room, sounding so unreal. No one answered. I turned on the lights, and the living room and kitchen were empty. Leora? I called out again, but there was still dead silence. Did she forget today's appointment? Or she had something to go out? All these speculations were swirling in my mind, and when I thought of Leora's recent unusual behavior, an ominous feeling enveloped me. Just then, a note on the coffee table caught my eye. I picked it up and saw a few lines scribbled on it. Eamon, I'm sorry, I have to go out tonight. Don't wait up for me. You have dinner first. Love you, Leora. I stared at the words with a mixture of emotions. What is this? Why didn't she wait for me at home? What's so important about going out? The seeds of doubt began to grow in my mind. Could it be that she was seeing someone else? A rendezvous with another man? The thought made me shudder. No, I had to calm down. I couldn't speculate like that. I was sure Leora wouldn't betray me, but her behavior was too disturbing. A wave of exhaustion washed over me. I sat on the couch, not knowing what to do. Maybe I should believe that she just have temporary emergency, but the inner restlessness, but how can not calm down? Looking at the empty room, I felt for the first time that our marriage was so fragile. Since that unusual Friday, Leora's behavior has become more and more erratic. She began to work late and party with friends more often, and came home later and later. What was once a loving couple is now like two strange roommates who only meet in the morning and don't even bother to say a word to each other. What hurt me most was her indifference to me. I remember when we first got engaged, Leora sweetly said, "Darling, you're everything to me." But now, she doesn't even bother to ask me about my work worries. When she comes home every day, she asks tiredly, "What's for dinner?" And that's all the wifely duties she has to fulfill. What is all this about? Is there something I'm not doing right? I began to think seriously about my behavior in this marriage. Although I was busy with my work, I didn't neglect my family. I went with Leora when she wanted to travel to Europe, didn't I? She has always wanted to learn yoga, I also support her to go to class. But why is the relationship between us passing away in silence? I'm at the grocery store this evening, chatting with Kelly, the cashier, a longtime resident of the neighborhood who not only provides us with fresh ingredients every day, but is also our community's living dictionary and never misses a piece of the gossip. Hey, Eamon, how's it going? Kelly greeted me with a smile as she scanned the merchandise. That's about it. I shrugged airily. Work, 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 work. Kelly smiled wryly. What? Married life not working out? I shook my head helplessly and laughed bitterly. Recently, Leora is always working overtime and coming home later and later. I wonder if she is.
An offer.
Kelly picks up on it right on the nose. I was silent. To be honest, this idea has been circling around in my mind for a long time, but I just don't want to face it. Kelly can see what's on my mind, puts away her smile, and says in a serious tone, Eamon, I probably shouldn't talk too much, but as someone who's been there, I have to remind you that when a woman starts to give up on her husband, it's not that simple. Has Leora been avoiding you lately too? Kelly hit the nail on the head. For the last month, Leora has been spending almost all of her time on her cell phone, either texting rapidly or making secretive calls. Every time I approached her, she would press the screen out in a panic. That look of weakness had to make me suspicious. I suggest you pay more attention to what's on her cell phone. Kelly hit the nail on the head. Maybe you'll find something. I didn't answer, but it was like a boulder in my heart. Kelly was right. It was time for me to look into it. Late that night, Leora did work late again and didn't come home. I was alone in my study with a heavy heart, and Kelly's words lingered in my mind. It wasn't that I didn't trust Leora, but her behavior was really disturbing. I remembered that she was always careful with her cell phone, as if she was hiding something secret. Intuition told me that the answer was in that phone. After some thought, I made up my mind. While Leora was in the shower, I snuck into the bedroom and picked up her cell phone, which was on the nightstand. A preview of a message popped up on the screen. See you tonight at 11 o'clock at the usual place. Don't forget to bring. The rest was cut off, but it was enough to make my heart skip a beat. The usual place, 11 o'clock? With what? God, what else could it possibly say? I unlocked the screen with a shaking hand, not realizing that it was unethical to do so. But when I entered the code, I hesitated. Was it really right to peek into my wife's privacy? Just then, the sound of water in the bathroom came to a screeching halt. I put down my cell phone in a panic and was about to sneak out of the bedroom when I was confronted by Leora, who pushed her way into the room. Eamon, what are you doing? Leora looked at me warily, her tone full of caution. At that moment, I felt like a thief caught in the act of stealing, flustered and weak. I fumbled for an excuse and fled back to the study, Leora's suspicious gaze following me all the way, burning my back. Oh my God, what have I done? I've been checking out my wife's privacy like a pervert. I hit my head in frustration, but the thought of that meaningful message sent my heart plummeting into a pit of ice. There was no doubt that Leora was hiding something from me, but what it was, I had no way of knowing. I paced around the room in an agitated state, my head in a whirl. Kelly was right. When a wife starts keeping secrets from you, it's not that simple. The seeds of doubt had already taken root in my heart. I had to find out the truth, even if it meant an outcome I didn't want to face. Leora, what are you hiding? Ever since I peeked at Leora's cell phone that night, I've been a different person, on edge all day long. Whenever I saw my wife buried in her cell phone with a suspicious smile on her lips, I couldn't help but wonder who she was talking to. What is she planning? All these thoughts grew like weeds, almost devouring my sanity. I began to have frequent nightmares about Leora kissing a man whose face was blurred, while I stood by helplessly, mouth agape, unable to do anything. When I woke up, the person next to me was not there. I tossed and turned until morning, my heart in turmoil, exhausted. I wanted to talk to Leora and ask her what was wrong with her, but she was like a flexible fish, always skillfully dodging my questions. Sometimes she excused herself by saying that she had a shopping date with a friend. Sometimes she said she was busy with a new project at the company, and in any case, she just avoided me and didn't even want to meet me. This Cold War lasted for a week. One day after work, I went to a bar to drown my sorrows and got drunk. When I got home late at night, I drunkenly pushed open the bedroom door, but found that the bedside lamp was still on, and Leora was sitting on the edge of the bed, looking grave. "You've been drinking?" Leora frowned, her tone unkind. I waddled over to the bed and sat down on my butt. "Yeah, what's up? My wife won't talk to me, so I have to rely on alcohol to get rid of my loneliness." Leora snorted and rolled her eyes. "You're drunk. What are you talking about? Who's ignoring you?" Suddenly, I felt an uncontrollable fire and violently grabbed her wrist. "Don't pretend. Lately you've been working overtime or partying with your friends, and you don't even bother to look at me. What the hell are you doing?" Leora wrenched herself free in pain, rubbing her reddened wrists, and looked at me angrily. "Eamon Brady, we are husband and wife, not prisoner and guard. I don't need to report to you to do what I want." "Really? So who were you talking to when you were texting in the middle of the night?" "Huh. You better explain." I regretted it as soon as I said it. "Oh my God. What did I say?" "It's like a perverted stalker." Leora's eyes widened and she was shaking with anger. "How dare you?" "You. How dare you check my cell phone?" "I have no place to hide." Alcohol instantly woke up half. I disheveled sitting on the edge of the bed, hands holding his head. "I'm sorry. I I did not mean. But you recently is too abnormal. I can't afford not to think about it more." Leora looked at me coldly, with anger and hurt in her eyes. "So what? You're invading my privacy by suspecting me of cheating on you? Eamon, do you know what you're calling this? It's called mistrust. Yes, I've been staying out late a lot lately, but I've had no choice. Do you think I want to? Don't I get lonely in a cold room, eating alone?" I was stunned and seemed to hear the sound of her heart breaking. Yes, I just focused on my own thoughts, but ignored the feelings of his wife. I bowed my head in shame. "I'm sorry, Leora, That's enough. Stop it." Leora sighed tiredly. "I'm tired. I don't want to argue." She turned her back and turned off the bedside lamp, leaving me sitting alone in the darkness. My heart is like being pulled hard and sour and astringent. This marriage, how did it become so? Once sweet lovers, why fall to the point of such mutual distrust? I spent the night on the couch, tossing and turning, my mind a mess. Leora was right. I shouldn't have looked at my wife with suspicion. But how could I ignore the signs Kelly had warned me about? Who should I trust and who should I doubt? At dawn, I made a decision. I would find out the truth. No matter how cruel it was, I had to face it. Maybe Leora had something else going on. Instead of suffering from suspicion, I had to find out for myself. But when I went into the bedroom, ready to apologize to my sleeping wife, where is she on the bed? On the nightstand, there was only a note. "Eamon, I'm going to my mom's house for a couple of days to cool off. Don't come looking for me. I'll come back when I've figured it out, Leora." I fell on the edge of the bed, clutching the crumpled note in my hand. The rift of mistrust had pushed us to the edge of a precipice. Was it all my fault? In the 2 days since Leora left, I have hardly had a moment's peace. During the day, I worked absent-mindedly, often making mistakes. At night, I tossed and turned, thinking about all the abnormalities of my wife. I kept thinking back to the time when we met and fell in love, trying to find out the reason for the breakdown of our marriage. But no matter what, I couldn't understand it. Leora and I were supposed to be a match made in heaven. We share the same hobbies, we have the same eyes, and even the bedtime sex is so suitable. In life, I never skimped on her favor. Every anniversary, every birthday, I carefully prepared for her surprise. She said, "With me is her happiness." But now, when the vow are gone with the wind? Early in the morning of the third day, when I was about to go to Leora's mother's house to talk to her with a lot of guilt and longing, the door to the bedroom suddenly opened and Leora came in, dragging her suitcase with a tired look on her face. "Leora, you're back?" I almost cried tears of joy as I took her in my arms. "I'm sorry. I was such an asshole. How have you been at Mom's for the past 2 days? Unexpectedly, Leora stiffly pushed me away and turned her face away. It's okay. Her tone was cold. I snapped back my hand, do not know what to say. In the morning, I tried to ask, so, you are still angry with me now? Leora didn't answer positively, but just sighed tiredly. Forget it, I don't want to mention it. Don't think too much about it. I'm just a bit irritable these days. It's nothing to do with you. But the bruises at the corners of her eyes and the stiffness of her smile made it clear that it wasn't as simple as that. Irritable? Why? Is it something difficult at work? I asked with concern. As a husband, I am obliged to share my wife's worries. Leora shook her head, her eyes wandering. It's not a big deal. It's just that the new project is a bit tricky. As you know, my job as a freelance writer depends on the mood of the client. I nodded my head in understanding, but in my mind, I was wondering, has Leora taken on any new projects lately? How come I've never heard her mention it? At that moment, Leora's cell phone, which was sitting on the nightstand, suddenly ding-donged, and Leora glanced at me in a panic and hurriedly grabbed the phone, her fingers darting across the screen. My heart hangs in my chest again. Who could have sent the message that made her so nervous? I resisted the urge to peek, pretending not to ask. Whose text message? So urgent, ah? No, no one. Leora stammered, putting her cell phone away. Just a friend saying hello? A lie that couldn't be more obvious. But what else could I say? Should I act like a pervert and grab her cell phone? Leora hastily changed the subject and said she was going to take a shower. I nodded my head, saw her into the bathroom, and closed the door with a bang. In the mirror, that haggard, confused man is not the miserable me. The following week was surprisingly calm on the surface. Leora didn't stay out so often, and we were able to talk and laugh like we used to. But somehow I felt that it was just the calm before the storm. A horrible premonition lingered in my mind. Finally, one night during a thunderstorm, the accident came. I was working overtime in my study when I suddenly saw a flash of lightning out the window, followed by a clap of thunder. The power went out. The whole room was plunged into darkness. I groped my way out of the study and found Leora's cell phone lying alone on the living room couch. How could Leora, who never leaves her cell phone unattended, have left it here? I was so suspicious that I picked it up by mistake. Just then, the screen of the phone lit up. A text message popped into my eyes. Darling, you look so beautiful tonight. I'll always remember our first kiss, that unforgettable moment that was like a dream. I look forward to seeing you again, my princess. Love you, Ryan. My heart broke at that moment. It turned out that my wife had really betrayed me. That text message shattered my heart like a bolt from the blue. I put down Leora's cell phone with a shudder and felt the sky spinning. So this was the truth, the cruel truth. The woman I loved most, my wife, had betrayed our marriage. At this moment, I felt anger, humiliation, pain, despair. All the negative emotions intertwined, almost swallowed me up. I don't remember how I left the house and how I got to James' place. By the time I regained my senses, I was sitting on James' couch, staring blankly at the beer can in my hand. Dude, are you okay? James looked at me worriedly. You look like shit. I smiled miserably and told James about the text message. After finishing, I shook my head mockingly. It's so ironic. I was naive enough to think that Leora was just stressed out at work. But it turns out, she's already tired of me. James patted me on the shoulder in silence and handed me a fresh can of beer. I took it and poured it down hard. My throat was burning. But what was it compared to the pain in my heart? Maybe it's not as bad as you think. James spoke hesitantly. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding? Have you asked Leora? I laughed bitterly. What else do you ask? That text message is not obvious enough? First kiss, my princess, this is called a misunderstanding? I flattened the beer can and threw it into the trash can. James sighed helplessly. But you have to give Leora a chance to explain. Maybe she has something difficult to say too? Difficult words? I snorted in disdain. If she really had a problem, why didn't she tell me, instead of cheating on me? We're husband and wife. Don't we have basic trust? I rubbed my hair in annoyance, feeling more tired than ever. James could see what was on my mind and ended the conversation at the right time. That night, I stayed at James's house, tossing and turning, without sleep. It was noon the next day when I got home, and Leora was sitting at the table, and when I entered, she gave me a tired smile. "You're back? Where did you go last night?" I didn't reply, but just looked at her coldly. Leora soon realized something was wrong and her smile froze on her face. "What? What's wrong? Who's Ryan?" I asked single-handedly. What? Leora instantly turned pale, her lips trembling slightly. She averted her gaze in panic and stammered, "I don't know what you're talking about." With a sneer, I pulled my phone out of my pocket, pulled up the text message, and handed it to her. "Read it. It's the text message you received last night. Ryan, Mr. Princess, the one who kissed you." Leora froze, her face as white as paper. She reached for her cell phone with a trembling hand, but I clutched her wrist. "Tell me, what's going on? Are you cheating on me?" Tears blurred Leora's eyes instantly. She choked and lowered her head. "Yes, I'm sorry, Eamon. I didn't mean to hurt you." A wave of dizziness hit me, and I let go of her hand, staggering back 2 steps. Despite the psychological preparation, but the truth in front of me, I still cannot accept. My wife, the woman I had loved for 8 years, had betrayed our relationship just like that. Why? My voice was hoarse as hell. "Why are you doing this to me? What have I done to you?" Leora sobbed and closed her eyes. "I'm sorry, Eamon, but I'm really lonely and you don't understand how I feel. You don't understand how I feel. You leave me alone every day. Do you know how lonely I am? Ryan, he will listen to me. He will give me care." "So you slept with him?" I was furious and slammed my fist on the dining room table. "The nature of marriage is that it's a sexual transaction between you and me, right? If I can't satisfy you, you go to another man?" Leora was crying her eyes out. "No, it's not true. I'm just confused. Eamon, what's wrong with our marriage? Do you still love me?" "Of course I love you. But now, I'm not so fucking sure." I hit my chest hard, feeling a pain that tore through my heart. I loved Leora, there was no doubt about it. But what she did made me doubt the relationship. How far can love go without trust? Leora raised her tearful eyes and looked at me as if she was waiting for an answer. But what could I say? At the moment of realizing the truth, I just felt extremely confused. "I hate you, Leora," I murmured, my voice faint. "But I hate myself even more. Maybe I pushed you towards another man by ignoring your feelings. God, what am I going to do?" I collapsed on the couch, covering my face with my hands. Beside me was the sound of Leora's suppressed sobs. We sat speechless for a long time, and the air was suffocatingly heavy. "I'm sorry, Eamon." For a long time, Leora spoke softly in a muffled voice. "Just give me some time, okay? I need to think this through." "Figure out what? Do you want to choose him or me?" I bitterly pulled the corners of my mouth, did not raise his head and waved his hand. "Go on. Leave here. Leave me. There's no room for you in this house." Leora said nothing more. I heard her footsteps as she got up to leave, the sound of the bedroom door opening and closing, the sound of her packing. I stared blankly at the ceiling, feeling exhausted. Maybe letting go is the best thing for each other. Night fell, twilight. I sat alone in the living room, facing the cold room, as if it were a lifetime ago. Just a few hours ago, this was our cozy little nest. But now, I was the only one left. The doorbell rang suddenly, and I was startled. Who could it be? With a little bit of luck, I walked quickly to the door and opened it. But it was James who appeared in front of me with a sad face. "Leora sent me to pick up her things." James sighed and walked past me into the house without waiting for me to say anything. I watched in awe as James packed Leora's clothes, suddenly realizing that it was all true. My wife was really leaving me. "Man, I feel sorry for you." Before he left, James patted my shoulder, hesitating to say anything. I forced a smile and shook my head. "I'm fine, James, it's our business, you stay out of it." "But—" "Come on, James, take care of Leora for me," I interrupted tiredly, not wanting to talk about it anymore. James nodded helplessly and left with his suitcase in tow. As soon as the door closed, I couldn't hold myself up any longer and sat down on the floor, tears streaming down my face. I've lost her. I've lost her forever. The days after Leora's departure could be described as hell. I was like a walking corpse, working mechanically and living numbly. Once I came home and saw the familiar furnishings, I felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness and pain. What was once a sweet memory has now become a sharp blade to torture me. I began to drink heavily, trying to paralyze myself with alcohol. But the more I got drunk, the more I missed Leora. This went on for about a month until one day I got drunk in a bar and almost got into a fight. Until one day, when I was so drunk in a bar that I almost got into a fight, James arrived in time and dragged me out of the place. "Look at you now, Eamon," said James, angrily shaking my shoulders. "Do you want to destroy yourself?" I looked at James drunkenly and suddenly burst into tears. Yes, I wanted to destroy myself without Leora. What's the point of losing her? James sighed and said in a serious voice, "Man, I understand your pain, but you can't go on like this. Life goes on. You're young. You deserve a new start." A new beginning? I looked at James blankly and felt a sense of sadness. What kind of new beginning can a 35-year-old man have after losing his beloved wife? "Listen, Eamon," James said firmly. "No one is forcing you to forgive Leora. That's your business. But you have to forgive yourself. Stop blaming yourself for the relationship. Maybe you just weren't right for each other. Let yourself go, okay? Let yourself go." How simple 4 words, but how difficult. But James is right. I can't go on like this. Even for myself, I have to pull myself together. That night, I made a decision. I was going to start over and live for myself. Starting with small things, I began to clean up my room and organize my mood. I switched the placements in my house and threw away some old things. Looking at my new home, I felt for the first time that maybe life could go on without Leora. I work hard and have achieved good results in my career. In my spare time, I would go to the gym or meet up with friends. Gradually, I stopped thinking about Leora all the time and stopped asking myself, what if questions? I knew that I was getting out of the darkness step by step. Another month passed, and I mustered up the courage to ask Leora to meet me one last time. We met at a quiet cafe and had a long, calm conversation. Leora told me that her relationship with Ryan only lasted a month. After a brief moment of passion, she realized it was just a moment of confusion. She felt so guilty for hurting me and hoped that one day I would be able to forgive her. I gazed at this familiar and unfamiliar woman in front of me and felt a great deal of emotion. Once, I thought that without her, my life would be meaningless. But now, I realize that the road of life is long. Love is only one part of it. I still have dreams to pursue and a wider world to explore. "I'm sorry, Leora," I said sincerely. "I forgive you for the good we had. I hope you'll find true happiness in the future." Leora was teary-eyed and nodded softly. "You too, Eamon. You deserve the best girl in the world. Bless you." That day, we said goodbye like old friends who hadn't seen each other for years. Walking out of the cafe, the fall sunshine poured over us, warming us up. Suddenly, I felt that maybe this was all arranged by God. We met and fell in love in the best years of our lives and walked through a journey hand in hand. Even though we parted in the end, this relationship has become an indelible memory in my life. Leora made me realize that to love someone is not to possess, but to fulfill. True love is to want the other person to be happy, even if that person is not yourself. Later, I met Sophie, the new marketing manager of my company, a sunny and cheerful girl. We met at work and gradually became friends. Sophie's simple and kind personality infected me and made me believe again that there is good love in the world. We started dating and slowly cultivated our relationship. This time, I learned to be more tolerant and understanding and to listen to each other's heart. One day, 3 years later, I proposed to Sophie. When she said, "I do," with tears in her eyes, I hugged her tightly and thought in my heart, "Thank you, Leora. You made me realize that marriage needs to be managed by heart and love needs to be tolerated by each other. Without that pain, I would not be the person I am now and the happiness I have now." Looking back, I finally realized that life is a process of falling and rebuilding. Every trial and tribulation is a gift from God that teaches us to grow. The road of feelings is never smooth. Each of us will experience confusion, struggle, loss, but as long as the heart has hope, one day will usher in their own good. Life goes on, and I will eventually meet a better me. Everything is for the best. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.